Lieutenant Colonel Vorth sat in his office on Titan 7, reading the same intelligence report for the fifth time. The file was marked with the highest security clearance and contained information about the Empire most wanted fugitive ghost, the legendary human sniper who had killed 57 Imperial officers in the past 3 years. The Zephyrian colonel was one of the Empire best hunters. He had tracked down rebels, terrorists, and war criminals across 12 systems. But Ghost was different. This human phantom seemed to appear from nowhere, eliminate his target with impossible precision, and vanish without leaving any useful evidence behind. Vorth studied the crime scene photos from Ghost's latest assassination. Admiral Flux 12 had been killed during a military parade on Kepler 186F. The shot came from 2 kilometers away through a raging sandstorm that should have made accurate shooting impossible. The bullet passed through a gap in the Admiral armor that was only visible for 0.3 of a second when he raised his arm to wave at the crowd security. Footage showed nothing useful, just thousands of spectators watching the parade. By the time Imperial forces reached the calculated firing position, they found only a single spent cartridge and boot prints that led to a cliff overlooking the ocean. Ghost had disappeared again like he always did. What made Ghost truly terrifying to Imperial command was his target selection. He only killed corrupt officers who abused human civilians. Admiral Flux 12 had been executing human prisoners for entertainment. General Krek 7 died the day after he ordered bombing raids on human hospitals. Commander Zalt 3 was found dead, hours after he started using human children as slave labor. The pattern was clear. Ghost was not just a killer, he was an avenger. His assassinations sent a message to every Imperial officer who thought they could mistreat humans without consequences. The bounty on Ghost Head had grown to 10 million credits, but no bounty hunter had even gotten close to claiming it. 3 separate assassination attempts against Ghost had failed spectacularly. The would-be killers were found days later, each eliminated by a single precise shot that demonstrated Ghost's superiority. The message was unmistakable. Anyone who threatened Ghost would join his target. Vorth had interviewed survivors from Ghost attacks when there were any. The few Imperial soldiers who lived to tell their stories all said the same thing. They never saw the shooter, never heard the shot until their officers started dying. One traumatized sergeant claimed that Ghost bullets seemed to bend around cover and strike targets that should have been impossible to hit. The Empire scientists had analyzed Ghost ammunition and found standard human military rounds. Nothing special about the bullets themselves, which made Ghost achievements even more mysterious. Some Imperial officers had started wearing full armor at all times, while others refused to appear in public without massive security. Details. Ghost reputation had grown. Beyond simple fear, he had become a symbol of human resistance. Across the galaxy, humans told stories about the phantom sniper who protected their communities. Imperial recruitment in human territories had dropped by 40% because potential collaborators feared becoming Ghost. Next target, Vorth pulled up a holographic display showing Ghost confirmed kills plotted across the galaxy. The assassinations seemed random at first, but the colonel had noticed a pattern. Recently, several attacks had occurred near the Kepler 442b system. 3 Imperial officers killed within 100 light-years of that dusty mining world. The timing was also significant. All 3 kills happened during the same 2-week period when Imperial forces were conducting anti-rebel sweeps in the Kepler sector. Vorth suspected that Ghost might have a base of operations somewhere in that region, or at least strong intelligence contacts who kept him informed about Imperial movements. Governor Vex-9 ruled the Kepler sector with typical Altarian cruelty. He had been demanding more troops and resources to crack down on human settlements. Vorth saw an opportunity to test his theory about Ghost location while helping the governor maintain control. Colonel sent a coded message to Imperial Command requesting permission to conduct a joint operation with Governor Vex-9 forces. They would implement harsh security measures across the Kepler system and see if Ghost came out of hiding to protect human civilians. It was a calculated risk, but Vorth believed it might finally draw the phantom sniper into the open. What Vorth did not know was that Ghost was already monitoring Imperial communications from his hidden ship. The sniper had sophisticated equipment that could intercept and decode most Imperial transmissions. He knew about the planned crackdown before Vorth's message even reached headquarters. Ghost's real name was Taemin Park, though he had not used that identity for 10 years. He was 25 now, lean and scarred from years of operating behind enemy lines. His eyes were cold and calculating, but they still held traces of the gentle boy who used to help his father serve drinks to miners and traders. Taemin had learned about war the hard way. After leaving his father's bar, he joined a human resistance cell that operated in the Outer Rim. He showed natural talent with long-range weapons and an intuitive understanding of tactics that impressed veteran fighters. Within 2 years, he was leading his own missions. The transformation from Taemin to Ghost happened gradually. Each successful mission made him more confident and more deadly. He developed his own code of ethics, targeting only the most corrupt Imperial officers and avoiding civilian casualties whenever possible. His father's lessons about protecting the innocent had shaped him into something the Empire could not understand or predict. Ghost operated alone, now using a modified stealth ship called Silent Wind that could slip past most Imperial sensors. He had contacts throughout the galaxy who fed him intelligence about Imperial movements and identified targets who deserved his attention. The network had grown organically as more humans learned to trust the phantom sniper who fought for their freedom. When Ghost intercepted Vorthka's message about the Kepler sector operation, he felt a chill of fear that had nothing to do with his own safety. His father was somewhere in that system, still serving drinks and pretending to be a harmless bartender. If Imperial forces started conducting thorough background checks, they might discover Sung Ho's true identity. Ghost had stayed away from his father for 10 years to protect him. The Empire knew that Ghost existed, but they had never connected him to anyone or anywhere specific. If they learned about the connection between Ghost and the quiet bartender on Kepler 442b, both men would be doomed. But now, Vorthka was bringing the hunt directly to his father's doorstep. Ghost could not stand by and watch Imperial forces terrorize innocent humans in his home system. He would have to act, which meant revealing himself and putting his father in even greater danger. Ghost began plotting a course to Kepler 442b while analyzing Imperial troop deployments and security protocols in the system. He had 3 days to reach his father before Vorthka arrived with his investigation team. 3 days to figure out how to protect the most important person in his life without destroying everything they had both worked to build. The legendary sniper who had never failed a mission was about to face his greatest challenge. Not killing an enemy from impossible distance, but saving his father without revealing the connection between Ghost and Park Sung-ho. The quiet bartender who had raised him to be a good man was about to discover what kind of man his son had actually become in his office on Titan 7. Vorthka finished reviewing the Ghost files and began preparing for departure. He had no idea that he was about to meet not just the galaxy's most wanted fugitive, but also the father who had shaped Ghost into the weapon he had become. The hunter was closing in on his prey, but he did not realize that the prey was coming to meet him. Park Sung-ho wiped down the same glass for the 3rd time that morning. His hands moved in slow circles as he stared out the dusty window of his bar. The distant star sat on the edge of New Busan, a mining town where nobody asked too many questions about your past. Sung-ho liked it that way. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty cantina. Sung-ho had been running this place for 15 years now, serving drinks to miners, traders, and the occasional Imperial patrol. He made the best synthetic whiskey on this side of Kepler 442b or so, his customers told him. They came for the drinks, but they stayed for his quiet company. Sung-ho was 52 years old now, though he looked older. His black hair had turned mostly gray and deep. Lines marked his face from years of forced smiles, but his hands were still steady and his eyes still sharp. He noticed things other people missed, like the way Imperial soldiers always sat facing the door, or how traders counted their credits twice before paying. The bar opened at noon every day except Sunday. Sung-ho would clean glasses, prep the bar, and wait for customers. His routine never changed. Wake up in the small apartment above the bar, shower, eat a simple breakfast, then work until late night. The locals respected him. He was just another human colonist trying to make an honest living in the Outer Rim. What the locals did not know was that Park Sung-ho used to be Captain Park of the Human Colonial Defense Force. He had fought in the Battle of Luna, when the Galactic Empire invaded human space. He watched his unit get wiped out by alien plasma cannons. He saw Earth surrender and humanity become second-class citizens in their own galaxy. After the surrender, Sung-ho took his young son Taimin and fled to the Outer Rim. They changed their names, buried their past, and started over. Sung-ho promised himself he would never touch a weapon again. He wanted to give his son a peaceful life away from the war that had taken everything. From them, Taimin was 15 when they arrived on Kepler 442b, a quiet boy who helped his father clean glasses and serve customers. He was smart and quick to learn, but he had seen too much violence for someone so young. Sung-ho hoped that time and peace would heal those wounds. He was wrong. 10 years ago, Taimin left home. He said he wanted to see the galaxy and find his own path. Sung-ho begged him to stay, but the boy was determined. He gave his son what money he could and watched him board a transport ship. That was the last time Sung-ho saw his child. Now Sung-ho lived alone with his memories and his guilt. He kept old pictures of his wife, Nari, who died in the Imperial bombing of Seoul. He had pictures of young Taimin too, but those hurt to look at. When customers asked about family, Sung-ho would smile sadly and change the subject. The Imperial soldiers who patrolled New Busan saw Sung-ho as harmless. They drank his whiskey and complained about their assignments. He served them with a friendly face and listened to their problems. They never suspected that he understood their tactical discussions or that he memorized their patrol schedules. Recently, though, things had been changing. The Empire was cracking down on human settlements. Governor Vex 9, the Altarian who ruled this sector, had been sending more troops to the Outer Rim. They were looking for rebels and resistance fighters. Anyone with a suspicious past was being investigated. Sung-ho noticed the change in the soldiers who visited his bar. They were more aggressive now, demanding free drinks and pushing around local humans. They made crude jokes about human weakness and talked about putting the colonists in their place. Sung-ho served them with the same friendly smile, but his hand shook slightly when cleaning glasses afterward. One evening, a young Imperial officer entered the bar with his squad. Lieutenant Crix was a Zephyrian with blue skin and cold yellow eyes. He looked around the cantina like he owned the place. His soldiers spread out, checking corners and exits like they expected trouble. Crix ordered a drink and started asking questions about Sung-ho background. Where was he from? What did he do before opening the bar? Did he have any military experience? Sung-ho answered carefully, sticking to his cover story. He was just a former mechanic who saved up enough money to buy a bar. But Crix was not satisfied. He had done his research. He knew that Sung-ho papers were a little too perfect and his story had a few too many convenient gaps. The lieutenant made it clear that he would be back soon with more questions, and next time he might bring a truth scanner after the Imperial patrol left. Sung-ho locked the bar early and went upstairs. To his apartment, he sat on his bed looking at an old photo of Taimin. The boy was 17 in the picture, smiling and holding a wrench from helping fix the bar equipment. He looked so innocent, so full of hope for the future. Sung-ho wondered where his son was now. Was he safe? Did he ever think about his old father who served drinks on a dusty mining world? Sung-ho had tried to contact him over the years, but Taimin seemed to have vanished completely. No records, no messages, no trace of where he might have gone. What Sung-ho did not know was that his son had not just survived. He had become something the Empire feared more than any rebel army. Taimin now went by the name Ghost, and he was the most wanted human in the galaxy. The Empire had placed a 10 million credit bounty on his head, but no one had ever seen his face and lived to tell about it. Ghost was a sniper who killed Imperial officers from impossible distances. He only targeted the corrupt ones who abused human civilians. His legend had spread throughout the Outer Rim. Some said he could shoot through walls. Others claimed he could kill from 3 kilometers away in a sandstorm. The Empire called him a terrorist, but humans whispered about him like he was a hero. 3 systems away, Lieutenant Colonel Vorth Ka studied intelligence reports about Ghost. The Zephyrian officer had been tasked with hunting down this phantom sniper who was crippling Imperial operations. He had files on every Ghost assassination, but no leads on the man identity or location. Vorth was smart and patient. He analyzed patterns and looked for connections. Recently, he noticed that several ghost attacks had happened near Kepler 442b. He suspected the sniper might be operating from that system. He was preparing to investigate every human settlement in the sector back on Kepler 442b. Sung Ho served his last customer of the night and locked up the bar. He climbed the stairs to his apartment and sat by the window looking out at the desert. He thought about his son and wondered if he was still alive somewhere in the dark between the stars. Sung Ho did not know that his quiet life was about to end. The Empire was closing in on him, and his son was already planning a rescue mission that would reveal both their identities to the galaxy. The peaceful bartender who had hidden from war for 15 years was about to discover that war had found him anyway. Outside in the desert, wind howled through the canyons where Ghost would soon make his base. The stage was set for a reunion that would change everything and show the galaxy what happened when you threatened the family of the most dangerous human alive. Governor Vex 9 received his new orders with barely contained excitement. The four-armed Altarian had been waiting for an opportunity like this. Imperial Command was authorizing a joint operation with Lieutenant Colonel Vorth to hunt down Ghost, the phantom sniper who had been embarrassing the Empire for years. The governor saw this as his chance for promotion. A successful capture of Ghost would earn him a posting to a wealthy core world instead of this dusty mining planet. He immediately began implementing harsh security measures across his territory. Every human settlement would be searched, every suspicious person interrogated until someone provided useful information. In New Busan, the change was immediate. Imperial soldiers began conducting random identity checks and searching homes without warning. They demanded to see employment records, travel documents, and proof of loyalty to the Empire. Any human who could not provide complete documentation was arrested for further questioning. Sung Ho watched the crackdown from his bar window and felt old fears returning. He had seen this before during the conquest of Earth. The Empire always started with papers and searches before moving to mass arrests and executions. His forged identity documents were good, but they were not perfect. Lieutenant Crix took personal charge of investigating Sung Ho's background. The young Zephyrian officer had been studying human military records and noticed discrepancies in the bartender story. Sung Ho claimed to be a former mechanic, but he moved with the subtle discipline of someone who had received combat training. During a surprise inspection of the distant star, Imperial soldiers searched every corner of the building. They found nothing suspicious in the main bar, but Crix was thorough. He ordered his men to check behind every panel and under every floorboard. That was when they discovered the hidden compartment. The secret space behind the bar contained items that Sung Ho should have destroyed years ago. His old service medals from the Colonial Defense Force, a few military manuals, and a photo of his unit taken before the Battle of Luna. It was not enough evidence to prove anything, but it was enough to destroy his cover story under interrogation. Sung Ho maintained his fake identity. He claimed the medals belonged to a dead friend who asked him to keep them as souvenirs. The military manuals were just historical books he found interesting. The photo was something he bought from a war memorabilia dealer. The lies came smoothly, but Crix was not convinced. Governor Vex 9 wanted to use torture to extract the truth, but Crix persuaded him to wait. They had no concrete evidence that Sung Ho was connected to Ghost or any rebel activity. Harsh interrogation might destroy their only lead. If the bartender really was just an innocent human with a few suspicious possessions. Instead, they decided to place Sung Ho under constant surveillance. Imperial agents would watch his every move, monitor his communications, and follow anyone who visited the bar. If he was connected to rebel networks or hiding important information, the surveillance would eventually reveal the truth. Sung Ho returned to the distant star, knowing that his life had changed forever. Imperial agents sat at corner tables pretending to drink while actually watching his every gesture. Electronic surveillance devices recorded his conversations with customers. Sensor equipment monitored who entered and left the building. The pressure intensified when Lieutenant Colonel Vorth arrived on Kepler 442b. The Zephyrian colonel was everything Crix aspired to be: calm, intelligent, and absolutely dedicated to the Empire. He took one look, at Sung-ho surveillance files and immediately identified additional suspicious patterns. Vorthka noticed that Sung-ho moved with military precision even when he thought no one was watching. He maintained his bar equipment with professional care and positioned himself to observe multiple exit routes during conversations. Small details, but they formed a clear pattern of military training. The colonel also discovered that Sung-ho had a son who was not accounted for in current records. The boy had left home 10 years ago and vanished completely from Imperial databases. No employment records, no travel documents, no trace of where he might have gone. It was exactly the kind of gap that suggested someone was hiding their true identity. Vorthka began developing a theory. Ghost might have personal connections to someone in the Kepler system. The sniper recent activity near this sector suggested local knowledge or intelligence contacts. It was possible that Ghost had family or friends somewhere on these worlds. The investigation expanded to include every human resident with missing family members. Vorthka compiled lists of parents whose children had disappeared, wives whose husbands never returned home, anyone who might be harboring feelings of resentment against the Empire. Sung-ho realized how close the net was closing when Imperial agents began questioning other residents about him. Lee Hyo-jin, the young woman who ran the medical clinic, was asked about her relationship with the bartender. Did he ever discuss politics? Did he seem angry about Imperial rule? Did he ask suspicious questions about military movements? Hyo-jin had become like a daughter to Sung-ho over the years. She reminded him of his dead wife with her gentle manner and determination to help others. The Imperial questions frightened her, and she came to the bar that evening looking worried and confused. Sung-ho tried to reassure her that everything would be fine, but they both knew the situation was getting dangerous. Imperial agents were getting more aggressive in their questioning, and Governor Vex 9 was growing impatient with the lack of results. The Altarian governor wanted someone to blame for Ghost continued freedom. The breaking point came when Vex 9 decided to use brutal tactics to extract information. He ordered the arrest of several human civilians, including Lee Hyo-jin, claiming they were suspected rebel sympathizers. The real purpose was to pressure other humans into providing information about Ghost. That night, Sung-ho watched Imperial soldiers drag innocent people from their homes and load them into transport vehicles. The governor announced that the hostages would be executed one by one until someone came forward with useful intelligence about rebel activities in the system. Sung-ho stood in his empty bar, staring at the wall where he had hung pictures of his customers and friends. Many of those faces were now in Imperial custody, facing death because of their association with him. His peaceful life had brought danger to everyone he cared about. For the first time in 15 years, Sung-ho considered reaching for the weapon he had hidden away. He pulled up loose floorboards in his apartment and retrieved the modified plasma rifle he had carried during the war. The weight felt familiar in his hands despite the years of peace, but one weapon would not be enough to rescue the hostages or stop the Imperial crackdown. He needed help, and there was only one person in the galaxy who might be able to provide it. His son, who had vanished 10 years ago and might not even be alive. Sung-ho activated an old resistance communicator he had saved from the war. It had not been used for 15 years, but the encryption codes should still work. He composed a simple message using phrases that would mean nothing to Imperial monitors but everything to someone who remembered their old life together. The message said, "The family recipe is in danger. Come home soon. Love, Dad." It was a code they had used when Tai-min was young, a way to communicate emergency situations without alerting enemies. The family recipe meant their cover was blown. Come home meant he needed immediate help. Sung-ho transmitted the message on Old Rebel frequencies, hoping it would reach his son somewhere in the vast galaxy. He had no idea if Tai-min was still alive, if he would receive the message, or if he would even care about his father problems after 10 years of silence. What Sung-ho did not know was that ghost monitoring equipment had already detected the Imperial operation around Kepler 442b. The legendary sniper was already en route to his home system, traveling in his stealth ship and planning a rescue operation that would reveal his identity to the entire galaxy. The message from his father only confirmed what Tai-min already suspected: his old life was about to collide with his new one. The peaceful bartender and the deadly sniper would finally have to face each other, and decide whether their relationship could survive the truth about what they had both become. The silent wind slipped past Imperial sensors like a whisper in the darkness. Taemin guided his stealth ship through the asteroid field surrounding Kepler 442b, using skills he had learned during 10 years of operating behind enemy lines. His modified vessel was invisible to most scanning equipment and silent as death itself. Taemin established his base in the rocky canyons outside New Busan, where he had played as a child. The familiar landscape brought back memories of better times when his biggest worry was helping his father clean glasses in the bar. Now he was preparing for a mission that could save his father's life or destroy them both, through his rifle scope. Taemin watched the town he had once called home. Imperial soldiers patrolled the streets in full combat gear while surveillance drones monitored every building. He counted 37 enemy personnel, including the command staff that had set up operations in the old mining office. The sight of his father serving drinks to Imperial soldiers with forced politeness made Taemin heart ache. Sung-ho had aged in the 10 years since they last met, his hair now silver, and his shoulders carrying the weight of years spent hiding. But he was still the gentle man who had raised his son to believe in protecting the innocent. Taemin spent 2 days studying Imperial patrol patterns, security protocols, and the locations where hostages were being held. He identified key targets and calculated firing solutions for shots that would minimize civilian casualties. His father had taught him that violence should always be the last option, but when it became necessary, it should be swift and precise. Governor Vex 9 grew impatient with the investigation. Lack of progress. He decided to make an example that would terrorize the human population into cooperation. Lee Hyojin, the young medical worker, would be the first hostage executed in front of the entire town to show what happened to those who protected rebel sympathizers. Execution was scheduled for noon in the town main square. Imperial soldiers forced every human resident to attend, while Vex 9 gave a speech about loyalty and the price of rebellion. He claimed that Ghost was hiding among them like a coward, and that innocent people would die until the phantom sniper revealed himself. Hyojin knelt on the platform with her hands tied behind her back. She looked frightened, but defiant, refusing to beg for mercy or denounce her friends. The execution squad raised their weapons and waited for the governor's final command. The crowd watched in horrified silence. The shot came from 1 kilometers away, passing through a narrow gap between 2 buildings and striking Governor Vex 9 directly in his primary heart. The Altarian governor dropped dead instantly, his forearms sprawling across the platform in a spreading pool of purple. Blood chaos erupted in the town square as Imperial soldiers scattered looking for cover while trying to identify the shooter location. Civilians ran in all directions, while officers shouted conflicting orders over their communication systems. The carefully planned execution had become a nightmare for Imperial forces. Lieutenant Colonel Vorthka immediately recognized the signature of the impossible shot. This was Ghost, announcing his presence with typical dramatic flair. The legendary sniper had just eliminated the highest-ranking Imperial official in the sector, with a single bullet that should have been impossible to make. Vorthka ordered all Imperial forces to defensive positions, while scanners swept the surrounding terrain for any sign of the shooter. He knew he was finally facing the most dangerous human alive, but he also realized this might be his only chance to capture the elusive phantom. Imperial soldiers established a perimeter around the town, while search teams moved into the canyons looking for Ghost firing position. But the sniper had already relocated to a new vantage point, where he could observe their movements and plan his next move. That night, Taemin infiltrated New Busan, using techniques learned from years of operating in hostile territory. He moved through shadows and blind spots, avoiding patrols and surveillance equipment with supernatural skill. The Imperial forces were looking for a sniper in the rocks, but Ghost was already inside their perimeter. The town he remembered from childhood had changed. Imperial checkpoints blocked every street and armed soldiers patrolled areas where children used to play. But Taemin knew every alley and hidden path. He had explored every building during his youth, and that knowledge served him well. Now reaching the distant star required patience and careful timing. Taemin waited until the patrol schedule created a brief window of opportunity, then slipped through the back entrance he had, used as a boy when he wanted to surprise his father. The familiar smells of the bar brought back memories of happier times. The reunion was everything and nothing like either man had imagined. Sung-ho looked at his son and saw a stranger lean and scarred with eyes that had witnessed too much death. The gentle boy who used to read books about heroes had become something harder and more dangerous. Tae-min saw his father and remembered the patient man who had bandaged his scraped knees and told him bedtime stories about brave warriors who always protected the innocent. The connection was still there, but it was strained by years of separation and the weight of what they had both become. They embraced awkwardly, both uncertain how to bridge the gap between past and present. Sung-ho wanted to hold his son forever while Tae-min struggled with emotions he had learned to suppress during years of solitary missions. Neither man knew how to begin the conversation they needed to have. Tae-min explained that he had been monitoring Imperial communications and knew about the investigation into his father's identity. He had come to extract Sung-ho and get him to safety before Vorth-ka discovered the connection between Ghost and the Quiet. Bartender, but Sung-ho refused to leave while innocent people remained in Imperial custody. The peaceful man who had rejected violence for 15 years was asking his son to escalate the conflict to save their neighbors and friends. It was a role reversal neither had expected. Their conversation revealed how much they had both changed. Tae-min had become Ghost, the legendary sniper whose reputation terrified Imperial officers across the galaxy. He had killed 57 enemies and saved countless human lives through precision violence guided by the moral code his father had taught him. Sung-ho had spent 15 years serving drinks and pretending to be harmless, while secretly observing Imperial operations and protecting the human community that had become his new family. He was still the same gentle man who valued life, but he had learned that sometimes peace required those willing to fight for it. The reunion was interrupted when Imperial forces began surrounding the bar. Vorth-ka had been analyzing the assassination scene and realized Ghost must have local knowledge to make such a precise shot. The investigation had led him to Sung-ho, and he was ready to spring a trap. Footsteps on the street outside announced the arrival of Imperial soldiers taking positions around the distant star. Searchlights illuminated the building, while snipers moved into overwatch positions. Father and son found themselves trapped with no obvious escape route. Vorth-ka's voice echoed from loudspeakers, offering terms for surrender. He correctly deduced that Ghost was inside the building with someone important to him. The colonel promised that hostages would be freed if Ghost gave himself up peacefully, but everyone would die if he refused. Standing in the bar where they had shared so many quiet evenings, Sung-ho and Tae-min faced the hardest decision of their lives. They could surrender and trust Imperial mercy, fight against impossible odds, or find a third option that honored both their principles and protected the innocent people they cared about. The clock on the wall showed 3 minutes until midnight. The peaceful life that Sung-ho had built was ending, and the lonely existence that Tae-min had chosen was about to change forever. Father and son would have to decide whether to face their enemies together or lose each other forever in the approaching battle. Surrounded by Imperial forces in the bar where he had spent 15 peaceful years, Sung-ho made a decision that surprised his son. He walked to the back room and pulled up loose floorboards, revealing a hidden cache that Tae-min never knew existed. Inside was his father. Old service weapon, a modified plasma rifle that had not been touched for years. Sung-ho's hands shook slightly as he lifted the weapon, but not from fear. The tremor came from muscle memory returning after years of forced retirement. He checked the power cell, examined the targeting system, and nodded with satisfaction. The rifle was still in perfect condition, maintained with the same care he gave everything else in his life. Tae-min stared at his father in amazement. The peaceful bartender who had rejected violence was preparing for war. The gentle man who served drinks with a smile was revealing himself to be someone much more dangerous than anyone suspected. Sung-ho explained that he was tired of hiding, tired of watching innocent people suffer while he pretended everything was fine. If Imperial forces wanted to threaten his neighbors and friends, then Captain Park of the Colonial Defense Force would remind them why humans were not as helpless as they appeared together. They analyzed their tactical situation. The bar had defensive advantages with reinforced walls, multiple exit routes, and Sung-ho's intimate knowledge of the building layout. Taiman had his sniper rifle, various exotic weapons and battlefield experience that had made him the galaxy's most feared marksman. More importantly, they had something the Empire did not expect: a father and son team, where one had strategic military training and the other had become a legendary killer. Their combined skills created possibilities that neither man could achieve alone. Their plan was simple but audacious. Sung-Ho would create a distraction by revealing his identity as a former Colonial Defense Force officer, drawing Imperial attention to the front of the building. Meanwhile, Taiman would use hidden passages to reach firing positions where he could systematically eliminate key targets. The goal was not to kill every Imperial soldier, but to create enough chaos and fear that the survivors would retreat. They needed to rescue the hostages, disable the command structure, and send a message that humans were not defenseless victims waiting for Imperial mercy. As dawn approached, Sung-Ho stepped onto the bar balcony and activated a military communicator he had kept hidden for emergencies. He announced his real name, rank, and service record, making it clear that he was not just a harmless bartender serving drinks to occupying forces. The psychological impact was immediate. Imperial soldiers realized they had been casually drinking in the establishment of a decorated human war veteran who had been studying their routines and weaknesses for years. Their safe gathering place had been a trap all along. Vorth-Ka recognized the name Captain Park from intelligence files about the Battle of Luna. He was one of the human officers who had inflicted serious casualties on Imperial forces before Earth's surrender. The colonel realized he was facing not just Ghost, but a coordinated team with military training. The battle began when Taiman took his first shot, eliminating the officer commanding the hostage guard detail from 800 meters through a window that was only visible for seconds. The precision strike created confusion and drew Imperial attention toward the building rear. Sung-Ho advanced from the front, using tactics he had learned fighting for humanity, freedom during the war. He moved with the smooth efficiency of a veteran soldier, his plasma rifle cutting down Imperial troops who had expected to face a frightened bartender. Father and son coordinated their movements through hand signals and tactical communication that came naturally, despite their years apart. Sung-Ho's strategic knowledge complemented Taiman's supernatural marksmanship, creating a combination that Imperial forces could not. Counter-Imperial soldiers found themselves fighting two different battles simultaneously: a conventional engagement against a trained military officer and a psychological war against an invisible sniper who seemed to violate the laws of physics. Every time they focused on one threat, the other would strike from an unexpected direction. The tide turned when several Imperial soldiers abandoned their positions and retreated to the transport ships. Facing Ghost was bad enough, but fighting both Ghost and his father was beyond their training and courage. The legendary sniper was no longer operating alone. Vorth-Ka tried to rally his forces, but the psychological damage was too severe. His soldiers had heard stories about Ghost's impossible shots, and now they were seeing those legends proven true while also fighting a decorated human war veteran who had fooled them for years. Lee Hyo-jin and the other hostages were freed. When their guards fled in panic, the young medical worker immediately began treating wounded civilians while Imperial forces regrouped outside town. The first phase of the battle was over, but Vorth-Ka was preparing for a final assault. As they reloaded their weapons and checked their ammunition, father and son discovered something unexpected. Fighting together felt natural, like they had always been meant to be a team. The lessons about justice and protecting the innocent had created a bond that years of separation could not break. Sung-Ho realized that his son had become exactly what he had tried to teach him: to be a protector of the innocent who used violence only when necessary, and always with precision. The boy who had left home 10 years ago had grown into a man who honored his father's values even when expressing them through a sniper scope. Taiman understood that his father's peaceful years had not made him weak, but had given him wisdom about when to fight and when to show mercy. The gentle bartender was still there beneath the surface, but so was the warrior who had fought for humanity freedom when it mattered most. Outside, Imperial forces prepared for their final assault. Vorth-Ka. The final confrontation comes when Vorth-Ka decides to end the standoff by threatening to orbital bombard New Busan. The Zephyrian colonel has called in an Imperial destroyer, betting that Ghost won't sacrifice an entire town to protect his identity. It's a sound tactical decision that fails to account for human unpredictability and the bond between father and son who found each other again. Timon's response is swift and devastating. Using intelligence gathered during his years as Ghost, he reveals to the Imperial fleet that Vorth Ka has been embezzling military supplies and selling them to black market dealers. The evidence is transmitted on open channels, complete with documentation that destroys the colonel's career and credibility. Faced with their commander's disgrace and uncertain of their legal position, the destroyer captain refuses to fire on civilian targets. With orbital support withdrawn, the ground battle shifts decisively. Sung Ho leads a group of armed townspeople in a coordinated assault on Imperial positions, while Tamon provides precision overwatch, eliminating targets that threaten civilian lives. The remaining Imperial forces, demoralized by their commanders, disgrace and facing unexpected resistance, begin to surrender or retreat. Vorth Ka, desperate to salvage something from his ruined career, makes a final attempt to capture Ghost by taking Li Hyojin hostage. The Zephyrian colonel demands a face-to-face meeting, believing he can still turn this disaster into victory. What he doesn't expect is for both father and son to appear together, openly revealing their relationship and their combined threat to Imperial authority. The confrontation in New Busan's main square becomes the stuff of legend. Vorth Ka holds his hostage while demanding Ghost's surrender, confident that the notorious sniper won't risk an innocent life. But he's facing two men who've learned that sometimes the greatest protection comes from refusing to be afraid. Sung Ho talks calmly to the colonel, while Tae Min positions himself for an impossible shot that will save the hostage without harming her. When Tae Min takes the shot, it passes within centimeters of Hyojin's head to strike Vorth Ka's weapon, severing his grip without injuring either person. The precision is beyond what anyone thought possible, and the psychological impact breaks the remaining Imperial resistance. Soldiers begin laying down their weapons, recognizing that they're not just fighting humans, they're fighting legends. The aftermath changes everything. News of Ghost's identity and his father's involvement spreads throughout the galaxy, inspiring human resistance movements and terrifying Imperial command. The story grows with each telling. A peaceful bartender and his sniper son who stood against an entire Imperial occupation force and won. The Empire tries to suppress the story, but it's too late. Humans across the galaxy have a new symbol of hope. Sung Ho decides to keep the distant star open, but now it serves as an unofficial headquarters. For the growing human resistance, Tamon continues operating as Ghost, but now he has a base of operations and backup when missions become too dangerous for one person. Father and son have found their place fighting together for the principles they both believe in. The story ends with a quiet moment between them, cleaning glasses in the bar just like they used to do years ago. But now their conversation includes tactical planning and target assessment, and the walls display photos of liberated human settlements alongside family memories. They've become exactly what they needed to be, a family united in purpose, fighting for justice in a galaxy that tried to destroy them. The Empire still offers bounties for both men, but bounty hunters have stopped trying. Stories have spread about what happens to those who threaten the father-son team that broke Imperial control over an entire system. Ghost and his father have become more than individuals. They've become a symbol that humanity refuses to be conquered, and that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the bonds between family members who choose to stand together against impossible odds. The legend of the bartender and the sniper continues to grow, inspiring hope in the oppressed and fear in their oppressors, proving that even in the darkest times, ordinary people can become extraordinary when they fight for what matters most.